Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views, and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
Tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn.
They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the new defense bridge between India and America?
This is what separates us from others who claim to be telling you global stories that matter. In the last 3 days, WION has been traveling across Syria. You are in Latakia city right now. Tell us, what is the situation on ground?
Welcome to WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, let's take a look at the stories making headlines this hour. India's GDP growth 7.2% in the fiscal year 2023 and 6.1% in the January to March quarter. Growth momentum likely to be sustained in 2023-2024, says Reserve Bank of India in its annual report. Amid rising Germany-Russia tensions, Berlin announces it will slash Moscow's diplomatic presence on its soil, says it will withdraw consent for operations of 4 of the 5 Russian consulates in Germany. Nepal's Prime Minister arrives in New Delhi for a 4-day official visit. He is to meet India's Narendra Modi on Thursday to discuss trade, energy, and regional cooperation. India's National Investigation Agency NIA conducts raids in Kashmir's Srinagar and Budgam against newly floated terror outfits operating in the region, incriminating literature and digital devices seized. Fifth Stefanos Tsitsipas storms into the 3rd round of the French Open with a breezy win over Spaniard Roberto Baena. Women's 3rd seed Jessica Pegula also goes through after her opponent retires.
Seals it in supreme fashion. Stefanos Tsitsipas.
In a rare incident in the Russian capital after months of war, Russia is blaming Ukraine for launching a drone attack on Moscow early on Tuesday, which reportedly left 2 people injured and several buildings damaged. According to the Russian state news agency, at least 3 residential buildings were damaged in Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin has accused Kyiv of seeking to frighten Russians after drones hit Moscow's high-rises.
As you know, the Kyiv regime has chosen a different path, the path of attempts to intimidate Russia, Russian citizens, and attacks on residential buildings. This is, of course, a clear sign of terrorist activities. First, I want to say that the Moscow air defense system worked in the regular way, although there are things for us to work on.
While incidents in Moscow are uncommon, on the other hand, Russia's UAVs continued their attacks on Kyiv for a 3rd straight day. Meanwhile, the U.S. says it does not support attacks inside Russia. Yesterday's attacks were the first time that the unmanned aerial vehicles hit residential areas of Moscow, hundreds of kilometers from the front lines in Ukraine. In Washington, the White House said it was still gathering information on the reports of drones striking in Moscow. Washington is a major supplier of weaponry to Ukraine on the condition it uses it to defend itself and to retake Ukrainian territory occupied by Russian forces. Here's what the White House press secretary said.
We do not support attacks inside of Russia. That's it. Period. I mean, I cannot be any more clear than what I just stated. We do not support attacks inside of Russia. Period. We've been very clear about that. That's been a general matter that you have heard from us over and over again this past several months, and I cannot be more clear than that.
According to few Russian officials, drones even attacked 2 oil refineries some 80 kilometers east of Russia's biggest oil export terminals. A fire broke out at the Apsky refinery, but was later extinguished, and a drone crashed into the Yolsky refinery without damaging it. Since Moscow launched a full-scale invasion of its neighbor last February, there have been a handful of incidents within Russian territory earlier this month. 2 unmanned aerial vehicles were destroyed over the Kremlin in a murky attack that Russia blamed on Kyiv. Moscow claimed it was an attempt to target Russian President Vladimir Putin, which Kyiv has forcefully denied. But as Ukraine and Russia keep on attacking each other with drones, NATO foreign ministers are meeting for a 2-day informal meeting in the Norwegian capital of Oslo. NATO leaders have been facing a complicated dilemma. How can they address Kyiv's push to join the military alliance without offering an immediate path to membership. Well, for more on this, we are being joined by John Erath from Washington, D.C. He is a senior policy director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. John, welcome back to WION, and thank you so much for joining us. Are we entering a new phase of the war with these attacks inside Russian territory?
At this point, it is not clear exactly what the nature of the attack was and who exactly was responsible. It's presumed that the drone attacks came from Ukraine or from pro-Ukrainian forces operating inside Russia, but that is not clear yet. So it's difficult to comment until we know what all the facts are. If these are Ukrainian attacks inside of Russia against civilian areas of Moscow, that is something that is against the international law and is ordinarily something that should be avoided in an armed conflict, the targeting of civilian populations. Now, the Ukrainians would say that this has happened on a far greater scale in their country with regard to Russian attacks. But that does not change the nature of the incident. So it's something that should certainly be discouraged on both sides of the war, this targeting of civilian populations. But that said, that is where we are going with warfare in the 21st century. The technologies, including drones, are increasingly available. They're easy to obtain. And I think we're going to see more attacks of this kind, not just in Ukraine and Russia, but worldwide in any kind of conflict.
U.S. officials are looking into reports that American-made military equipment was used by pro-Ukrainian Russian militia during an attack along the Russian border a few days ago in Belgorod. What about this? When the United States says that it's not party to the war, it does not support any attack in Russian territory, but then U.S.-made weapons are found when Ukraine or Ukrainian forces or forces sympathetic to Ukraine decide to go inside Russia and attack Russia. Where do we stand on that?
Once again, it's difficult to comment until all the facts are clear. The U.S. has been very clear when providing weaponry to Ukraine that it is to be used for defensive purposes only, to liberate Ukrainian territory that is occupied by Russia. The supply of such equipment is very important to the Ukrainian war effort, and so Ukraine would be very stupid to endanger that supply of weapons and other equipment that is coming in. So I think it unlikely that this would be used except by a mistake in the case of a Ukrainian attack on Russian territory.
Well, thank you very much for that. We'll be watching these developments very closely, and we look forward to speaking to you again very soon on WION.
Thank you for inviting me.
House of Oversight Committee, the United States main investigative agency's chairperson, James Comer, is pursuing action to place FBI's Director Christopher Wray in contempt of Congress after the Bureau informed the panel that it will not abide by its subpoena about a potential criminal plot involving the then Vice President Joe Biden. However, in a statement, the FBI said that it's still dedicated to working with Congress and will provide access to the document in a particular format which protects the confidentiality and also protects important security interests. Comer had subpoenaed FBI twice, but both times FBI notified the panel that it would not provide the documents and stated that it needs to protect the Bureau's confidentiality. The document in question allegedly describes a criminal scheme involving Biden and a foreign national related to the exchange of money for policy decisions. The document is being looked into after a whistleblower approached Comer. Comer had said that based on the alleged specifically within the documents, it would appear that Department of Justice and the FBI have enough information to determine the truth and accuracy of the information in it. However, the White House has maintained that the president never spoke to his son regarding the dealings and that Biden was never involved in them.
The members being being put in place. We have a lot to discuss, but while the press is here, I want to make
The Indian defense industry has been steadily expanding over the past decade. The Indian government has been actively promoting defense exports, which aids self-reliance and also boosts the economic growth. And now, with a 23-fold increase, India's defense exports are at an all-time high in 9 years. India's defense exports have reached an all-time high with nearly $1,900 million in 2022 and 2023. Surging from a mere $82 million in 2013 to 2014. The remarkable increase reflects India's progress in the global defense manufacturing sector. With exports reaching more than 85 countries, India's defense industry has shown design and development capabilities to the world. At present, 100 firms are exporting defense products. The country, once known primarily as a defense equipment importer, now exports a wide range of major platforms. Key export platforms include aircraft like the Dornier 2028 artillery guns and others. The global demand for India's indigenous products, such as light combat aircraft Tejas, light combat helicopters, and aircraft carriers, is also on the rise. In order to give a push to defense exports, the government has taken a number of policy initiatives and brought reforms over the last 9 years. Export producers have been simplified and made industry-friendly, with the end-to-end online export authorization curtailing delays and bringing ease of doing business. The expenditure on defense procurement from foreign sources reduced from 46% to overall spending in 2018-19 to 36.7% in December of 2022. On Tuesday, a woman who accused U.S. President Joe Biden during the 2020 presidential race of sexual assault appeared in Moscow. Tara Reid, who worked in Biden's congressional office in 1993, said she wanted to stay in Russia after a Republican lawmaker told her she was in physical danger. In a streamed interview with the Sputnik Media Group, Tara Reid stated she arrived in Russia as a vacationer. She said, and I quote, "When I get off the plane in Moscow for the first time in a very long time, I felt safe, heard, and respected." Reid sparked headlines in early 2020 by claiming that then Senator Biden sexually assaulted her in a Capitol Hill corridor back in 1993 when she was only 29 years old. Her accusations came just as Biden was ramping up his campaign against former President Donald Trump, who himself faces accusation of sexual abuse. Biden categorically denied her claims. He said, and I quote, "I'm saying unequivocally it never happened." Tara Reid said she filed a complaint after the alleged incident, but no record has been found. A 1996 court document records her ex-husband mentioning that she had complained of sexual harassment while working in Biden's office, and it's not clear if her allegations have ever been formally investigated. Reid, who called herself a geopolitical analyst, said that after making her allegations public in 2020, her life was threatened and she was called a Russian agent. In the interview, she promised to be a good Russian citizen, adding that she also wants to hold on to her U.S. citizenship. Disgraced Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes arrived at a Texas prison camp on Tuesday, where she will begin serving her 11-year jail sentence. Holmes was convicted early last year on 4 counts of fraud linked to her failed blood testing startup, a company once valued at $9 billion. Theranos CEO, who was once billed as the world's youngest self-made billionaire, was convicted of fraud at a trial in California last year. The prosecutor said that Holmes misrepresented Theranos' technology and finances. She testified her own defense and said that she believed that her statements were accurate at that time. Earlier this month, a U.S. judge ordered Holmes and her former business partner, ex-Theranos boss Ramesh Sunny, to pay $452 million to the victims. Sunny Balwani is already serving a 13-year imprisonment in California for his role in the scheme. Together, the pair are accused of duping some of the world's richest and most prominent investors, including media tycoon Rupert Murdoch and former U.S. Treasury Secretary George Shultz. Holmes' firm had promised that it had technology that could detect conditions such as diabetes with just a few drops of blood. The technology, however, never worked and finally collapsed in 2018.
Jeans, merino wool sweater.
Well, investment banking is in the news once again, and this time it's Goldman Sachs making the headlines as the markets for deals continue to stagnate. The financial giant is preparing to implement a new round of job cuts. Well, following a significant reduction earlier this year and additional layoffs in the previous year, Goldman Sachs is expected to let go of fewer than 250 employees. The impact of these departures is projected to affect individuals across various seniority levels, including partners and managing directors. The current challenge faced by Goldman Sachs and other investment banks can be attributed to a combination of factors. The Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate hikes aimed at curbing inflation have led to a slump in deal-making. Simultaneously, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine has clouded the economic outlook, creating further uncertainty in the financial sector. This slowdown in activity has resulted in a decline in global mergers and acquisitions, reaching the lowest level in over a decade during the first quarter in 2023. Similarly, volumes for initial public offerings have plummeted to their lowest level since 2019. Goldman Sachs aims to improve its efficiency ratio and enhance profitability by reducing headcounts, not replacing department staff, and trimming other expenses. Their plan includes a targeted payroll reduction of $600 million. While the downsizing strategy may help achieve a more favorable efficiency ratio, it also underscores the challenging landscape faced by investment banks. Rival firms like Morgan Stanley and Lazard Ltd have also made similar moves, announcing their own rounds of layoffs in recent months. And now some news from the world of entertainment. The red carpet spotlight was on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in Los Angeles as the web-slinging sequel is set to hit theaters this week. More details in our next report. Thank you so much for staying with us and watching WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani, and I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place, but don't go away. A lot more news and headlines coming up next, only on WION World is One.
Gravitas tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn.
They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the